Our readings today come from the Laughing Bird, Psalm 19. Your glory is written in the sky, God. Your artistry is carved on the face of the earth. From one day to another, the messages pass on, and each night puts the next one in the know. Not a word is spoken, not a sound do they make, yet their silence reverberates around the earth, and their unspoken message echoes from pole to pole. You made the sun at home flying across the sky. It takes to its task with the eagerness of a bridegroom, as exalted as an athlete besting the tape. As your messenger, God, it does its rounds, from one end of the sky to the other, warming everything in its path. Your revered will is right on the mark, Lord. It gives our souls their second wind. What you say goes, and any fool can wise up by taking note. Your instructions are spot on, Lord. Anyone who follows them will be glad they did. When you direct us to do is easy to see, and once seen, everything becomes clear. Respect for you keeps us true, Lord. Nothing can corrupt it, now or ever. What you decide is always accurate, a fair ruling beyond dispute. Your word is worth far more than even diamond-encrusted gold. It is sweeter by far than any mouth-watering delicacy, even chocolate-dripped strawberries with cream. But that's not all. Your word, O Lord, keeps me out of danger, and following it pays me off richly. Can anyone put their finger on all their own faults? Lord, eradicate the bugs I haven't yet identified. Remind me not to entertain sour, contemptuous thoughts, and don't let them start pulling my strings. Without them, I can stay on course and keep my record clean. That's what I want, Lord. I want all the things I say and all the things I mull over in my heart to be things I'd be proud to offer you. For you are the bedrock of my life and the one who puts me back where I belong. Our reading today is from James 3, verses 1 through 12, New Revised Standard Edition. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For all of us make many mistakes. Anyone who makes no mistakes in speaking is perfect, able to keep the whole body in check with a bridle. If we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide their whole bodies. Or look at ships. Though they are so large that it takes strong winds to drive them, yet they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. How great is a forest set ablaze by a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue is placed among our members as a world of iniquity. It stains the whole body, sets on fire the cycle of nature, and is itself set on fire by hell. For every species of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature, can be tamed and has been tamed by the human species. But no one can tame the tongue, a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessings and cursings. My brothers and sisters, this ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and brackish water? Can a fig tree, my brothers and sisters, yield olives, or a grapevine figs? Nor can salt water yield fresh. Where's there? Jesse, do you want me to read the sermon?
I'm here.
Now we know why we need it. Why we know we need volunteers to come up here.
Yes. Let this be. Can you do it all by yourself? Yeah. Does it require a lot of moving parts and your attention going here, there, and the other place?
Remember my saying for today, a calm nature. So.
for sure. Good morning. Whew. So here we are in week 3 of our study on the book of James. And you might be saying, oh, good grief, we're in the middle of a series or something like that. I can't keep up. You don't have to keep up. You don't. Every episode is a standalone episode. This is more like Law and Order than Yellowstone, if you understand what I'm saying there. But it is a special week, though. It is a special week because if there's anybody who is even remotely familiar with the book of James, this is what you've been waiting for, because it's the only passage in this book that some preachers give any attention to. We preachers love chapter 3. In the study Bible that I received as a graduation gift, the section heading in chapter 3 is the power of the tongue. And then the Life Application Study Bible lists it as taming the tongue. But I like the contemporary English's version. It's brutally straightforward. It's the tongue, which sounds like an old black and white 1950s sci-fi movie, right? I think part of the reason why this passage is so popular with preachers and congregations alike is that it lays things out very simply, but it also has kind of an edge to it. See, hellfire and brimstone preachers love it because there's words like judge and strict and curse and hell and things like that in it. But it's also a passage that people can relate to, because verse 8 says, no one can tame the tongue. And ain't that the truth? Whew. We all know how hard it is to manage our words. Words have a potential for doing a lot of damage. And I think we can all recall early memories of when people have said hurtful things to us and how the impact of those words have affected us over our lifetime and how we respond to other people. And I'm sure we can also think of occasions where we've used words that are hurtful to others and then wish we could take them back, especially when we see the damage that those words inflicted. My favorite vacation Bible school teacher, Miss Eldora Flick, and yes, she is the Rice Krispie treat lady, she had this great lesson about how dangerous our words can be. And I've passed this lesson, I've passed this illustration on for a long time to Sunday school classes and camps and all sorts of youth events. What Eldora would do is she would hand us 3 things. She'd give us a little paper plate about so big. She'd give us a toothpick, and then she'd give us a little travel-sized tube of toothpaste. And then she'd say, hey, let's have a contest to see how fast we can empty these tubes of toothpaste onto these paper plates. And this was back when toothpaste tubes were not made of plastic. They were made of tin. And I read somewhere lead too, but I don't know. I'm still alive. You all are still alive. But these, so you could really roll them up fine and just get every little bit out of there. And then Eldora would say, okay, now take your toothpicks and let's see who can get the toothpaste back in the tube first. And we said, wait a minute, I don't think that's possible. And she'd say, well, I don't see why not. Someone had to put the toothpaste in there in the first place. Use your toothpicks. And so we'd, unroll these little tubes and try our best to get the paste back in. But even the little bit that we were able to get in just came out again. And God bless Eldora. She let us work at this task for quite a while. She wanted us to fully experience the frustration and the futility of trying to get toothpaste back into a tube with a toothpick. So finally she'd say, this is what it's like when we say mean things and hurtful things to others. It doesn't take any effort at all to let those words come blurting out, but it's impossible to take those words back, and it always leaves a big mess. And we kids, 9-year-olds, this was a huge revelation. A revelation enough that I carry it on through my life and in my teaching. So the first lesson that we learned in our study of James a few weeks ago is that words matter. And then the lesson after that was actions matter as well. In fact, they matter even more. So this week, the lesson is all about the consequences of being careless with our words. And since this is a fairly simple lesson, let's treat it like a top 10 list. Preachers love top 10 lists, okay? And this is convenient because James uses 10 examples of how we misuse our words. So let's just launch into it, shall we? And let's do a countdown instead of a count up. So here's number 10. Number 10 is slander and lies. You might be thinking, if you've been watching the news lately, that's about number 1. Okay, so it's an easy place to start, because let's face it, slander and lies seems almost fashionable these days, right? It's like an avalanche, because once the trend gets started, everyone just wants in on the action. And then pretty soon, it becomes the expectation. And people who don't use slander in their verbal arsenal are seen as weak. But here's the thing. Slander and lies is number 9 on the thou shalt nots in the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not bear false witness. James puts it another way later on in this book when he says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And yet hearing the commandment and actually carrying out that commandment are two different things, aren't they? All right, number 9, gossip. Here's one that I think has always been fashionable, because I think that somehow it is rooted to our subconscious somewhere, because we love to gossip, right? And sometimes we aren't even aware when we're doing it. Gossip magazines are one of the few magazines left that are still in print form. You cannot get a paper copy, a solid copy of Wired, National Geographic, or The Atlantic anymore, but there's always copies of People, Star, Us Weekly, and the National Enquirer available in the store checkout lines, because after all, inquiring minds want to know. We want to know the latest dirt on Prince Harry and Meghan, or the ongoing battle between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, or who Taylor Swift's next ex-boyfriend is going to be. Sometimes we can't even help ourselves. Maybe we think our own lives are too mundane, and we've got to look at other people's dramas because that's where we get our kicks from. Maybe it's Schadenfreude. Remember that one? We talked about that back in the beginning of the summer. It's the pleasure we get at the expense of other people's misfortunes. So it's no surprise that this was an issue in the church that James was addressing in this letter. Church people are awful when it comes to gossip. Here we go. Want to take a guess what word church people use in the South as a substitute for gossip? News. This is it. Sharing. Talk about rebranding something. Oh, my word. All right, let's move on. Number 8, insults. You know that old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me? We know that's a bunch of hooey, because words cause harm, and the bruises last a long time. Next week, starting on Saturday, is the beginning of United Against Hate Week. The Chico Area Interfaith Council received a grant last spring to launch a prevention and intervention program that addresses hateful speech and actions. There are a lot of populations that find themselves on the receiving end of hateful words. There are religious organizations here in Chico that have been on the receiving end of very hateful words and actions. Congregation Beth Israel, our synagogue here in town. Chico Havurah, the other Jewish organization in town. The Chico Islamic Center, the local mosque. Bethel AME Church, African American Church. They've had their property defaced. They have had threats made to their staff and congregation members. Minority groups, including Black, Hispanic, Asian, Middle Eastern, Native American, Sikh, the LGBTQ community, are all too familiar with hateful words and actions. People with physical and mental disabilities are treated poorly too. People are even treated badly because of their vocation. People like, ask first responders, right? Like police officers, firefighters, medical workers. Ask social workers. Heck, even PG&E employees after the 2018 Camp Fire, having their not their work trucks, but their personal vehicles being defaced and things thrown at them. Words definitely hurt, but sometimes insulting words evolve into physical violence. Remember, the theme of James so far has been words matter, but actions must accompany words, or else the words don't mean anything. Unfortunately, that's also the case when it comes to bad words. Bad words often turn into bad actions, as we see every day in this ridiculously and dangerously divided world. Let's go to number 7. Grumbling and complaining. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Now this one cuts to the heart of what it means to be a Christian. And listen to me on this one, because remember, the most common description of Christians in the first 2 centuries of that movement was, see how they love one another. Even when critics made fun of them for some of their unusual beliefs and practices, they always said, but they sure do love one another. But over the centuries, Christians have developed a reputation of being complainers too. And I don't get this, because Jesus calls us to be a people of joy and enthusiasm and hope and gratitude. And yet it is so easy to let our words and our actions just suck the joy out of life and the world around us even. There is no room for that in the body of Christ. Number 6, speaking rashly. This is one of James' most vital pieces of advice. He says, everyone must be quick to listen, but slow to speak and slow to become angry. The principle here is simple. Try listening more. In each of our conversations, particularly in ones that have the potential to get heated or that are just tough conversations, listen first. Listen. Hear the other person out. It is amazing how much more sensible and more productive one's responses will be if we simply pause to think about and reflect before we will speak. Okay, here's number 5, cursing. Okay, I have a confession. Sometimes a naughty word or two comes out of my mouth. For emphasis, I may let a few colorful descriptive terms or metaphors slip out. But James uses the word curse, which I believe has not necessarily a different meaning, but it has another meaning to it, because cursing is when you use your words to wish harm on another person or direct harm to another person or to demean them or to belittle them. In the ancient world, people often used gestures to curse other people. Wow, that's weird. Oh, really? Yeah, I think anybody who has ever driven a motor vehicle in California has been on the receiving end of a curse that's accompanied by a gesture. Am I right? See, I think that's what James is talking about here. The words that are used against to demean people. Number 4, not using encouraging words. Now, I'm going to borrow some words from the Apostle Paul. We've loved the book of Galatians. For some reason, this really ties into the book of Galatians a lot. But Paul, to the Galatian church, wrote, "Bear one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." That's from Galatians 6:2. And then in Romans 12:15, Paul writes, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep." Yet how many times do we put our own selfish desires and fickle feelings before others? Number 3, not practicing patience. Being in control of our words has to be rooted in the spirit of patience. Often we are quick to let our emotions take over, and then we pay the price for the words that just spill out of us like the toothpaste on that little paper plate. See, when our kids were growing up, anytime we said the word patience and then pause, the kids would roll their eyes and go, "Is a virtue." Am I not right, Cameron? Hypocrisy is number 2. Let's talk about this one. This was Jesus' most common accusation against the religious leaders of his time. So it's really no surprise that James picks up on this too. Because for James, hypocrisy goes beyond just, too much talk and not enough action. Hypocrisy is when your words and actions don't even match at all. Hypocrisy is when you teach about the law, but then you turn right around and break the law. For the church, this might mean something like when saying all are welcome, but then you close your doors to people who aren't like you. That's hypocrisy. There's an old saying that says, your walk talks and your talk talks, but walk talks louder than your talk talks. I'll quiz you on that one later. We're down to number 1. Number 1 is not speaking the truth in love. Now this one's a little trickier than the other ones. It's different because taming the tongue is more than just keeping your mouth shut when you feel like saying something that you probably shouldn't. But it also means saying something that you don't want to say but may very well need to be said. Our speech can be used to speak the truth to others, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes it is costly to do so, and it can be very painful. But when it is done in love and genuine concern for other people, in the long run, speaking the truth in love is for the benefit of all involved. So today, may we recognize the power of our words, and may we use them to bless rather than to curse.